Let's go fishing. Decided to take my kayak out on my family member's private pond. This pond holds plenty of fish and it's where I caught my PB. It's one of my favorite spots for bank fishing and kayak fishing. Starting off with the jig over by some lily pads. But this pond had a lot of vegetation on the bottom, so it was proving pretty difficult to pull the jig through. I kept trying to find areas that weren't super covered in vegetation. After working it slowly, I ended up having a bite here, but no fish. Either a false alarm or I lost the fish in the vegetation. Tossed it back out there, but this time the fish got me tangled up in some vegetation and I had to pull the kayak over to get it out. And I tossed it in a slightly different spot, but the vegetation got me once again. I usually fish crankbaits and whopper ploppers for my kayak, so it was pretty hard for me to fish the jig. But I swapped over to a fluke to see if I could do that for the kayak as well. That's when I noticed my line was moving in some weird direction, so I set the hook. And it turned out to be a fish. Pretty stoked on that. First catch of the day. Nice little fish on the fluke. So I tossed it back out there, but had no luck, so it was time to move. No luck on the fluke in this next spot, so it was time to switch back over to the jig. I tossed it up in the lily pads and it wasn't long before I had a bite. Boom, fish on. Now this fish tried to tangle me up in the lily pads, but I wasn't having it. So I just kept reeling and the kayak got pulled over there. Wasn't entirely sure I still had a fish on, but could feel some shakes on the other end. What do you know, got the net out and got the fish. Nice little fish on the jig. So I threw it back out there in the same spot and got another fish. Just tossing up in the lily pads and moving it slow. That seems to be what gets the bites here. And boom, fish on. Tossed it back around the same spot to see if I can get another fish. But like I said, used to fishing crankbaits and whopper ploppers from my kayak, so the hook set was proving to be quite challenging for the jig. I also don't fish in my kayak much, so I pretty much have to relearn how to fish from it every time I get in. That fish came off almost instantly. And the next time I hooked up, about the same thing happened. The fish jumped out of the water and spit the hook. But once I had another opportunity, I was able to bring a fish into the kayak. Boom, fish on. These fish were loving the jig that day. Pulled in another nice little smallmouth bass, but I figured it was time to move, so I paddled back to the back of the pond, had no luck and headed right back. I was running low on time as I was fishing after work, so I figured my time was best spent where I was getting all the bites. And unfortunately for me, once I set the hook and reeled this fish closer to the kayak, I lost it right at the side. You can call it quick release, but I also call it heartbreak. After moving down the bank and casting a few more times closer to the launch, I had no luck, so it was time to head in. I wanted to fish the bank, especially the spot where I caught my PB while I had some daylight left. I was tossing the jig around as well as the fluke, but was having no luck. So before I went home, I gave the whopper plopper a try. I figured since it was getting closer to dark, they might be a little more active on the top water. So I tossed it out and brought it closer to the lily pads on the bank. And I got a lot of bites on the whopper plopper close to the bank. This turned out to be the best move with short time. And right about here is when I had my bite. Boom, fish on. Gotta love top water. Nice little fish on the plopper. So I tossed it back out to see if I can get another fish before I left. And what do you know? Fish on. Pulled with the lilies, and what do you know? Last fish of the day. Got to catch one more largemouth before I headed home. Not a bad day of fishing at all.